In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 191 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is creativity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Maya Angelou. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm extremely grateful to bring you today's episode for a few very exciting reasons. First off, because our guest is an incredible guy. And second, because we have recently just partnered up with our guest's company, Murdy Creative Co. Their founder and today's guest, Colin Murdy, is an awesome individual. Their company makes very high-end journals that you can customize to your exact needs and wants. As an avid journal user and believer for so many years now, you can clearly understand why and how this partnership for No Quit Living is so near and dear to me. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Colin, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen today?
I really am. I think everybody always has to be ready to make it happen, otherwise it never will.
I could not agree more. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you have either a personal story of perseverance or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Well, that's a great thing. I mean, I think the first and foremost, it's, no matter what you do, you're going to die at the end of your life and you're going to have to work throughout your life to make something happen. So it's either, it's path A or path B. You don't know what the cost of either path is going to be. So you got to kind of charge down the path full force and, hope for the best. And I think for me, there's been a couple of great opportunities for me to quit throughout this. And I say they're great opportunities to quit because, there's been times where I've gotten, job opportunities that have arisen outside of my own company. And they happened right at the perfect time where my company was struggling. And so there's been some avenues out, and I'm glad I haven't taken any of them because like recently we had the middle of February is always a tough time for companies, particularly small businesses. You're coming off the Christmas high. And so you in the beginning of January often have a good amount of money. And you want to start on new projects and you want to kind of ramp up and tool up for the next big year that you're going to have. And that's what we did. And we spent a lot of money building up our production because it was a very intense Christmas season for the best, of course. But we ramped up our production. And then all of a sudden at the end of January, we saw a significant drop off in our sales. And that was a really difficult kind of time for me. And I mean, I set it up to go door to door even to bring on people because at some level, if it's your dream, if it's what you're passionate about, and if it's what your skill set's built around, you kind of have to do what it takes no matter what. And I think that was an important time for me. And we did turn it around. I mean, I went back to the marketing, which was my background, and I broke down the numbers of our advertisements and said, okay, what's not working anymore? And there was a couple of things that I hadn't realized were all of a sudden not working. And, when we changed that up, we retooled it, we found our mojo again, and we're back at it.
So got to ask you, what was it during those times that I guess allowed you to go door to door and figure out that you needed to look at where the money that was coming in was going out? Because I think so many times, especially people in small businesses and yours being a newer business, I think a lot of times that's where people actually fail is within the first 6 to 18 months. So what was it? Was it something mentally or just something you knew, or what got you back to, in essence, going back to the basics and really going door to door and figuring out where the money was going?
Well, when you've got something that's a core part of your business, particularly if it's marketing that's working, that's bringing in business, when all of a sudden it stops working or it doesn't work as well, I mean, you got to go back to why it started working in the first place. And for me, it's mental. I mean, I like the game, I like the challenge, and it's funny. I've been listening to a couple of good podcasts, and a lot of them are about adventure and how life is about adventure, not happiness. And I think for me, that's been a huge motivator, is to realize that life is full of ups and downs, and you got to realize that the downs are part of the adventure. And so what I did is I went back and I looked at what was the core of our advertising, and we'd had a variety of ads that we've been running for a long time. And all of a sudden, I realized that a couple of the core ads, they were reaching a frequency where they were no longer going to be effective, and they all kind of expired. Of some of our oldest and best ads kind of all expired in their effectiveness at the same time. And so it was a little bit mental, but I realized that if I'm going to play the game, I've got to play the game well, and I've got to play to my strengths, and I've got to use the tools that I've got in front of me that are low cost, right? Being able to read your marketing data is a really low cost way to fix your marketing. So, that's that was the thing that I needed to start with, was the low hanging fruit in front of me.
No, and I think it's important because a lot of times it's some of those very basic things, like you said, low-hanging fruit, which is right in front of you. I think that people kind of overlook, and they go to look at the more or the larger things and say, well, this must but not be working. But a lot of times it's those things that are right in front of you. So speaking of your company, I wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, Colin, just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a bookmaker at heart. I'm a craftsman, and I think that's kind of what I love to do. I went to school for business, and I got my undergraduate in marketing, and I did my master's degree in international business, global sales and marketing, and management. And after that, I was working as the grad assistant for the dean of the business school, who was a great friend and an incredible mentor. And he was a great leader, but he was a great leader that carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He did a really good job being the person to fill in wherever the team needed filling in. And so he had a crazy schedule that I helped kind of organize a little bit, and was involved in a ton of projects. And so when I sat down and I said, I'm going to give him a gift, I'd been making books for a couple of years at that point. And I said, okay, I know what you need. You need something that's going to be durable. You need something that's going to be slim, because there's no room in your briefcase anyway. And you need something that's going to look good in any setting, because you're a professional person who meets with a lot of professional people. So I knew that was going to be the kind of the core of the way it needed to look and feel. And I also knew that it needed to be a platform that could be very easily reorganized and be kind of universal. And so the 3-hole punch kind of became the basis of the design. And so I made him one, and I gave it to him, and he turned around and bought 30 of them for the School of Business. And it was at that point, ironically, that I thought to myself, there might be a business here. And that's kind of how we got rolling. And we started putting some product to start with. We put a little product on Amazon, and a year later, now we have a full-time employee, 2 part-time people, myself and my wife working at the company, and we've added a bunch of new product lines, and we've got a lot of new cool stuff coming down the road.
No, it sounds amazing. And when you and I spoke a couple of days ago, I just loved how a simple idea where you wanted to do something nice for somebody and in essence thank them turned into a business. And I think that's just really neat, because a lot of times people just go after that infamous dollar or being successful financially. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think your route that you took is pretty interesting. So why don't you just quickly tell our listeners a little bit about where they can find you and find your different books and journals?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, the best place is to go to our website, murdycreative.co. That's MURDY creative.co. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. We do a lot of photos there. And if you really want to kind of be in the loop, the best thing to do is follow us on our Instagram. We post a lot of great content every day. And you can find links to my podcast on our Instagram as well. I have a podcast. It's murdycreative.co is the name of the podcast. And I do that about every day. I'd like to say I do it every day, but it's almost every day. And it's just a short little 10-minute podcast. And usually I center around a topic that's kind of prevalent to that day. And it's kind of turned into a great little kind of audio diary of how we've evolved and expanded over the course of the last couple of months.
Well, as a fellow podcaster, I think that's awesome, and I too have a second career myself, so it's definitely kudos to you for doing that. Wanted to ask you, Colin, how do you personally define success, or what does success mean to you?
This is a great question. success is such a difficult thing to pin down for so many people. And, I think for me, success is being able to do the thing I'm passionate about every day and to pay the bills with it. That's an important part of it. And if I can maintain that, structure, if I can keep doing what I love to do every day, even if it doesn't make me millions of dollars, I'm still going to be happy, right? You have to love playing the game. And I love playing the game. There's so much out there that's part of this adventure that even in the times that are hard, at least I can feel like I'm creating a good thing that I can be proud of, and I'm a productive part of society. I think that's all you can ever really ask for.
Speaking of those lines, being productive and creative, if you had to define yourself, but you can only use one word, what would that word be?
I would call myself a craftsman. I think that's the thing first.
You are the first person that has used that word. I love it.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about this. I think, craftsman, the reason why I chose that, and I still use that whenever I kind of talk to people about what I do for my job, is it's like, you think about people that were blacksmiths or bookbinders of kind of the historical tradition. And it was a pride in crafting good things, right? They wanted to be innovative in their products. They wanted to be innovative in their designs, and they wanted to create really high quality things because they cared about the art and they cared about the process. And I think that is what I always want to be.
No, and I think that does speak to what you do, and I'm a big fan of your journals, and hopefully we have some exciting stuff coming out later about that. But one of the things we often touch on or we try to dive into is the importance of a morning or a daily routine, and I was curious if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
It's funny. I've been thinking about this question for a little bit now, and it's been something. I was reading the the Habits of the Highly Successful People book, and this has been something I've struggled with for a really long time. I've never been very good about routine in the mornings, and I think I've actually suffered because of it. I've always been someone who likes to be creative and likes to have my day be very different from day to day. I like changing things, and so I haven't really done a very good job creating routines, and I think it truly has been to my detriment. The only thing that I've really settled into doing in the last couple of months, I've done it all my life, but in the last couple of months, I've decided to do it every day, and I choose to do it every day, is journal. And I've loved doing that. And it's funny, when you have a journal company, it feels like an obvious thing to do, but even if you don't have a journal company, it's something that I think is truly powerful because it can be used for so many different things. And some people, I think, feel afraid to journal, or they feel like they don't want to journal because they're not going to, quote, do it right, or they're going to, fail at journaling. But you can't really fail if you use it as a tool to help you, because you define what helps. And I think that's important. And for me, what's really helped and has been the way I journal is I like to document something from each day that was an idea I had or something that had happened that was unexpected or could shift the way we think. And I want to kind of do some of that in my day, because then when I feel like I'm stuck in a rut or I feel like I haven't made any progress, all I have to do is go back and read some of my journals from the last couple of months. And it's just incredible how far and how fast we've come up the ladder. And it's been amazing.
I'm glad you touched on that. I was just having a conversation a week ago with a couple of people that are in one of my mastermind groups, and we were actually talking about that exact thing, which is, well, I don't really know how to journal. How do you journal? And, the answer that I gave is I showed them my journal. I have notes, I have doodles, I have quotes, I have things that, stood out to me. I have books I want to read. I have movies, I have places. I literally, my journal goes anywhere and everywhere. But what I love about it is it works for me. So what I was telling these two gentlemen is that, they need to figure out what works for them, and don't worry about finding the right or the perfect one, because it's different for other people. So I'm glad you touched on that. And you also touched on reading the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I was curious if there's anything else you've read recently or something you're currently reading that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I actually really, really have enjoyed Dr. Jordan Peterson's 12, I think it's the 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, I think is the name of the book. And I've been listening to his podcasts, particularly on the psychological significance of the Bible, which is it's a doozy if you ever get a chance to listen to it. They're quite excellently done because they're all about, it's very deep psychology about the human, the humans and how we interact with each other. And like listening to him is like a full, I mean, they're 2-hour long podcasts and they're like listening to a full on college lecture by a really, really intelligent person. And his book does, I think, a better job of breaking it down into a little more manageable chunks at times. But the book itself, it helps answer a lot of, I think the mindset and the discussion that happens in the world of today is how it's like, how can I be happy? And a lot of what he points out is that happiness is such a volatile and kind of unknowable thing. It's very difficult to quantify happiness, that may not be the right aim. And instead we should realize that our life is about adventure. And sometimes adventure has, difficult turns. Sometimes you're going down the mountain, but that's good, right? It's through those struggles that you find the strength of your own capabilities, and you can test the waters and try new things. And it's through that process that you become a better person, a stronger person.
No, I'm so glad you touched on that is because everything looks good when you're winning and when you're getting that business deal and when things are going in a positive fashion. But like you said, it's during those struggles, it's during those tough times where you actually really learn. And on one of my podcasts recently, I just said that, nobody learns as you're being handed that championship trophy. It feels good and you celebrate and you rejoice. But the reality is a year or two before that, when you were losing or when you get knocked down or when you were struggling, that's when you were learning. That's when you were improving. Now, again, you want to get to the end result, but I'm glad you touched on it because it is those struggles where you do find your strength. I wanted to change lanes for a minute here, Colin, and ask you, if you could go back to the age of 20 and give yourself just one piece of advice, what would that advice have been?
I think that piece of advice would have been go out and try. Because at that time I was, I was in the middle of my college. I was finishing up college in the middle of my degrees and everything. And, I kept saying to myself at that point, oh, well, I'll just wait till I graduate and then I'll go get a job. And then once I have that job, I'll go start my business, which kind of was my path. But I realize now that it's like, I should have just leapt then, because there's this pervasive, sometimes I still teach on occasion, and I interact with a lot of the young entrepreneurs in the university, and a lot of them are like, well, I haven't quite perfected the idea yet. And I laugh every time I hear that, because nobody's idea is ever perfect. There is no idea that is perfect, and there's no product out there that can't be improved upon. And if you wait until you have the perfect product, you're never gonna start. You're never gonna get anywhere. And the second you launch that perfect product and it fails, you're gonna feel very disappointed. But if you set out to say, you know what, I'm just gonna leap, right? I'm just gonna go for it now, even though it's not gonna be perfect. And in fact, I'm gonna do it badly. That's better than not doing it, right? So that's what I would have told myself. I would have said, Colin, just go out and do it.
No, it's great advice, and I think you're probably the fourth or fifth person in the last month or so that's touched on the whole idea of being perfect and perfection. And I think you hit it absolutely right on the head, and you said it perfectly, is that if we all wait for something to be perfect, whether it's a relationship, a business, an opportunity, the reality is maybe 1 out of 1,000 times is perfect, but everything else, you can find that one little thing or the thing that you'll tweak or change. So I'm glad you touched on that. And speaking of going back, and we talked about books and things, I wanted to ask, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a great question. I would love to have dinner with Walt Disney. I think Walt Disney, is the epitome of someone who loved their craft so much that they wanted to take it to a transcendent level, that they wanted to become so good at their craft that it became more than them. And because he wanted that, and he was so dedicated to creating magic, which is such an interesting extension of the art of storytelling, that it's no wonder to me when I look at what happened after he died many years ago, by the way, and you see how fast and incredible the Walt Disney Company has become, and you realize that that's a result of the innovator, the spark that was his desire to create magic and to transcend just being a good storyteller.
No, and it's amazing. Obviously, he had big goals and big dreams, but I think just to your point, you said is the company has gone and then some, probably way beyond he ever thought. But it's because he laid down that foundation, as you said, an innovator, and he was a creator and he believed in it. And I think it would be a remarkable dinner. I wanted to ask you, as I know you have a pretty good presence on social media, is if there's anybody professional or famous that you look up to, and if so, why?
I have to say, I think Gary Vaynerchuk is someone I follow very closely on social media. I think for a couple of reasons. One is, while he has somewhat of a kind of an abrasive attitude at times, I think he's very authentic and very genuine, and I think he's become a strong proponent of being authentic and genuine, which is a very good plan for anybody out there. But I listen to him a lot, and I listen to a lot of what he's saying, and partially because a lot of the tactical advice, the true, trenches, you should do this every day kind of stuff that he's recommending on Instagram, I can tell you it works. And we've actually taken some of his ideas and kind of gone a little further with some of them in our own testing, and they've worked incredibly well. So I think that he's a good person if you're looking to say, how do I tactically begin the process of building my presence? It's like, if you do the 15 things that he says do, you're gonna succeed. It's just difficult not to.
So putting you on the spot here for a second, for any of our listeners that have either a company or maybe they just want to get their own presence on Instagram to be a little bit bigger, what's the one thing that you could recommend them that they could do immediately, today or tomorrow?
This was a process we actually started testing out pretty early. It was actually one of the first things I did when we started running Instagram ads. And I had the ads go to our profile rather than to our website. And the reason why, in my opinion of human psychology, is people who are working on Instagram, they want to stay on Instagram. They don't want to go off Instagram because they want to be entertained on Instagram. And so when they see ads that say, check this, shop now, and they see the ones that are going to obviously go off of Instagram, I think they're less inclined to click on those because they feel like that's going to, take them out of Instagram. And even a really good ad, you have a much higher activation energy to get people to click on an ad that goes off of Instagram. And so we had all of our ads go to our profile. And then once we had that ads go to the profile, part of the reason was because of our luxury binders are very nice, but they're not the 69-cent binders you can buy at Walmart. And so for a lot of the population that would be seeing our binders, I think there would have been a little bit of a sticker shock. It's, our Murdy #1 leather, refillable leather binder is $49, right? So I think that's a very fair price for the quality you're getting. But for a lot of people, that's a kind of a surprise. And I think if we had advertisements that went straight to our website, people would see the sticker and immediately click off. But because we had our ads direct to our profile, you see that first image, you like that first image, you're not leaving Instagram, so you feel fine. You click on the go to profile. All of a sudden, you see all of these amazing images that we post all the time. We've got all these beautiful images from these different things. And now you get a better picture. You get a bigger picture of what we're selling and what we're doing. And then maybe you click on one of the pictures that you didn't originally see, and you read the comments, and every single one of the comments we've responded to, so that we have that conversation. And you say, oh well, they're very active. And then you maybe click on our website, and now you're already invested to some extent, and you've got to go a little ways on our website before you can even buy. So there's a process of bringing people in a much more, I think, beautiful way, where we want to bring them in through showing them the quality first before showing them the price, because I think it helps people buy in more. And people follow us a lot more, right? We've gone up 10,000 followers on Instagram in the last month, and we did 10,000 before that, and we're going to do 10,000 this next month, right? It's that kind of growth, because what happens is people look at it, they see the Instagram ad, they click in the profile, and maybe they don't buy, but they follow at least, because that's a really low cost thing for them to do. And it's actually, in my opinion, better than email marketing, because Instagram has a vested interest in making those people see your content and like it.
That's
so
great.
Because of that, you're building it.
No, you're building a following, and that's great, and great advice. And hopefully, some of our listeners might take that into consideration. And I'm glad you touched on it. And I think it's interesting how you spoke about why you follow Gary Vee. And as you said, he is a little bit abrasive for some people, but what he does very well is he talks about the actual tactical things to do each and every day, and he talks about how and why and when. So regardless whether you're a fan of his maybe the words he chooses or how sometimes he does, as you mentioned, come across a little bit abrasive. What he does do is he identifies and he breaks down the reasons for doing things and why it's been successful, not only for him, but for so many others. So I'm glad you touched on that. Wanted to ask you, if you wouldn't mind just telling us what the word accountability means to you.
I think accountability is it's like integrity, right? It's doing the right thing when no one's looking because you know the right thing to do. And I mean, a line that Gary Vee uses all the time is it's always the right thing to do the right thing. And I think that's absolutely true all the time. And I think people who do the wrong thing, they know it's wrong and they don't get away with it. Even if they get away with it in the public's eye, I think privately people are tormented by the mistakes they've made. And for me, that's why I used my last name as the logo for the company, because if I'm going to put my name on something and I'm going to put it out in the public, I'm not willing to do that unless it's incredibly good, unless it's perfect, unless it's as close to perfect as I'm humanly able to make it, because that matters. And so not only am I accountable to obviously the people that are our clients, and I'm accountable to the people that, look up to me, I'm also accountable to God, right? I feel like this is my vocation. I feel like this is what I've been called to do. And when you serve a higher purpose, you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
No, I love that. And speaking of quotes, you touched on a Gary Vee quote. Do you have any other favorite quotes?
That's a good one to put me on the spot for. I think Theodore Roosevelt was the one who had this quote, and I'm going to do my best to not get it wrong, but he said, I think there's no greater joy in life than working hard at work worth doing. And I think that's one that's been really important in my life. And I hope that I will always be able to work hard at work worth doing.
And then I know you touched on it before, but again, if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners the best way to follow you, connect with you, both your company as well as your podcast.
Absolutely. So you can check us out on our website, murdycreative.co. That's MURDY creative.co. And you can also, that's the same thing for our Instagram, murdycreative.co. And it's the same thing for our podcast, murdycreative.co, and same thing for Facebook. So go check us out on all of those different platforms. Please follow us on Instagram so you can keep up to date with our amazing things. And if you're a company and you're out there looking for gifts for your employees or your clients, we are able to do logos and other customization that can really help create an amazing, amazing gift for those people out there who are important to you.
And I can attest to that. They do amazing work, and I'm excited as we have some probably exciting news down the road in regards to your company. And then last question I wanted to ask you, Colin, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
It's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be hard, and it's always worth it.
I love it. Great advice. I truly, truly appreciate not only your time, but also sharing some amazing stuff with us. And again, to our listeners, would definitely recommend that you check out Colin and his company as well as his podcast. So thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to hopefully connecting again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 191. As we often discuss morning routines, one of the most common answers and topics happens to be the importance of journaling. When I was introduced to both Colin and his amazing company, I just had to connect with him. What I love best about Colin's story is that back in college, he was looking to do something for a professor of his to show both his appreciation and his gratitude. In essence, he was paying it forward for someone else when his business idea was birthed. Colin shared a recent challenging time for his business and how it was through his struggle where he found his strength. As a creative person, the advice Colin would have given to the 20-year-old version of himself would have been just to go out and try. I loved Colin's parting words. It's never perfect, always hard, but always worth it. So my challenge to you today is very simple. What thing, idea, or relationship are you waiting for to be just perfect, and why? Things will rarely, if ever, be perfect. Timing, circumstances, or opportunities. Instead, as you go for your greatness today, take Colin's advice and just go out and try. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.